I believed I had the perfect family until one dinner shattered everything. My wife declined wine. My daughter revealed a shocking truth about Uncle Preston. And I uncovered a betrayal so intricate that it involved my own business, my brother-in-law, and secrets that stretched back decades. What unfolded next transformed me from a trusting husband into a man who realized that sometimes the cruelest revenge is simply telling the truth. My name is Chase Stone. I'm 43 years old. Until 3 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. 20 years of marriage to Camila, a beautiful daughter named Amelia, who had just turned 16, and a business that my father had founded, which I had turned into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Stone Auto Group was more than just our livelihood. It was our legacy, our reputation, everything we'd worked for over 2 generations. The first warning sign should have been when Camila returned from her sister's wedding in Miami acting strangely. She had always been affectionate, greeting me with a kiss when I came home from work, but suddenly she seemed distant, distracted, and always glued to her phone. Whenever I tried to get closer, she would pull away, citing tiredness or stress over Amelia's college applications. Then there was the doctor's appointment she mentioned casually, something about routine tests and women's health matters she didn't want to discuss. I didn't press, assuming she deserved her privacy. What kind of husband asks his wife about every medical appointment? A wise one, it turns out. The next red flag was how much closer she became to her sister Brenda and her husband Preston. Preston Hayes had always been a decent guy, quiet, worked in construction management, and seemed to worship the ground Brenda walked on. He married into our family 5 years ago, and I had come to think of him as a brother. We had even discussed the idea of him joining the dealership business and potentially opening a 5th location together. But lately, family gatherings felt different. Camila would light up every time Preston entered the room. She would make excuses to sit near him, laugh a little too much at his jokes, and touch his arm while talking to him. When I mentioned it once, she rolled her eyes and accused me of being jealous and paranoid. She said I was working too hard and seeing things that weren't there. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was paranoid. The auto business is cutthroat, and when you're successful, everyone wants a piece of what you've built. I'd been dealing with a hostile takeover attempt by a national chain, fighting to keep our family business independent. The stress was getting to me, making me question everything and everyone. But then came the night that changed everything. Camila told me we were having a big family dinner at Romano's, our usual spot for celebrations. Nothing special, she said, just wanted to bring everyone together. My parents, her parents, Brenda and Preston, even my brother Jake, who rarely attended family events anymore. The whole drive to the restaurant, something felt off. Camila was nervous, fiddling with her wedding ring, checking her reflection in the mirror every few minutes. When I asked if she was okay, she snapped that she was fine and told me to focus on driving. At Romano's, she insisted on sitting across from Preston instead of next to me like she usually did. She said she wanted to catch up with Brenda about wedding planning details for some cousin's wedding. But I noticed how her gaze kept drifting to Preston, how she bit her lip whenever he spoke. The warning signs were all there, glaringly obvious for anyone willing to see. But sometimes, when you love someone, when you've built a life together, you choose to ignore what's right in front of you. You convince yourself you're imagining things. You tell yourself that love conquers all, that the woman who vowed to be faithful 20 years ago would never break that promise. I was about to learn just how wrong I was. The atmosphere at Romano's that night felt electric, like the air before a thunderstorm. Everyone was there, my parents, Camila's folks, Brenda, Preston, and even my brother Jake, who had driven down from Chicago. The table was set for celebration, but something felt wrong from the moment we sat down. Camila kept fidgeting with her napkin, barely touching her food. When the waiter came around offering wine, she quickly placed her hand over her glass. "No wine tonight, honey?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Camila Stone forced a smile. "Just not in the mood." That's when it hit me. My wife never turned down wine at family dinners. Never. She always ordered the house red. Always made a toast to family. But tonight was different. And suddenly, all those doctor's appointments made sense. I felt my chest tighten as the pieces started to fall into place. The distance, the secrecy, the mysterious medical visits. My mind raced through possibilities until it settled on the most obvious explanation. Or maybe, I said loud enough for the entire table to hear. It's because you're taking antibiotics for gonorrhea from your cruise. The table fell silent. Forks stopped midair. Conversations died mid-sentence. My mother gasped, nearly dropping her water glass. Camilla Stone's face drained of color. Chase, what are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. The mysterious illness, avoiding intimacy, all those doctor visits you wouldn't discuss. Preston Hayes shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes darting between me and Camila. Brenda Hayes looked confused, glancing between her sister and her husband. You've lost your mind, she whispered. Camila Stone's voice trembled as she spoke. This isn't the place. My father cleared his throat. Son, maybe this isn't the right time. No, Dad, I interrupted, keeping my gaze locked on Camila. This is exactly the right time. Let's talk about honesty and family values. The waiter approached our table, likely drawn by the tension, but quickly backed away when he saw what was unfolding. Chase Stone, stop this now. Camila Stone hissed through clenched teeth. You're embarrassing our family. Embarrassing our family? I scoffed bitterly. That's rich, coming from someone who... Daddy, Amelia Stone interrupted, her 16-year-old voice cutting through the tension. Are you talking about Uncle Preston? Time seemed to freeze. Every head at the table turned toward my daughter, who sat there with wide, innocent eyes, completely unaware of the bombshell she had just dropped. Preston Hayes went pale. Brenda Hayes stared at her husband with growing horror. My parents sat stunned, trying to process what they had just heard. What did you say, sweetheart? I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. Amelia looked around the table, suddenly realizing something was wrong. I just thought Mom said not to tell you about Uncle Preston visiting when you were at the dealership, because it would upset you about work. The silence that followed was deafening. 20 years of marriage, of trust, of building a life together, all of it shattered in one innocent sentence from our daughter. The silence after Amelia's words hung in the air, thick with tension. Preston Hayes looked as if he wanted to disappear. Brenda Hayes stared at her husband, pieces of a puzzle she never wanted to solve falling into place. Amelia, Camila Stone snapped, you're confused. But my daughter shook her head. No, Mom. I remember. I was homesick from school that Tuesday when Uncle Preston came over. You said it was for planning Grandma's birthday, but you were in your room talking for a long time. The color drained from Camila's face. Preston finally found his voice, stammering. Listen, Chase, this isn't what. Shut up, I said quietly, but my words carried enough menace to silence him immediately. Don't you dare try to explain this away. My father reached across the table. Son, let's take this outside. No, Dad, I said, standing slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. Everyone needs to hear this. 20 years, Camila. 20 years I trusted you. Built a life with you. And you've been what? Sleeping with my brother-in-law behind my back? Suddenly, Brenda Hayes lunged across the table at her sister. You piece of trash. How could you do this to me? Preston grabbed his wife's arm. Brenda, please. She spun on him like a wildcat. Don't touch me. Don't you ever touch me again. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Other diners openly stared as our family drama played out in real time. The manager approached hesitantly, likely wondering if he should call security. How long? I demanded, my voice cutting through the chaos. Camila Stone's eyes filled with tears, whether real or calculated, I couldn't tell anymore. Chase, please not here. Not in front of Amelia. Answer the question. How long? Finally, Preston spoke, his voice barely a whisper. 2 years. 2 years. 2 years of lies. Of family gatherings where they sat across from me and Brenda, playing their roles perfectly while betraying us both. 2 years of me defending Camila when my gut told me something was wrong. I felt something cold settle in my chest, replacing the burning rage with a chilling clarity. This wasn't just about adultery anymore. This was about the deliberate destruction of 2 families, the corruption of everything I'd built and believed in. Get out, I said calmly. Camila Stone blinked. What? Get out of my restaurant. Get out of my sight. Get out of my house. Both of you. The ride home was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Amelia sat in the passenger seat, tears streaming down her face, apologizing over and over for causing trouble. I kept reassuring her that none of this was her fault, that sometimes adults make terrible choices and children shouldn't be burdened with their secrets. Behind us, Camila followed in her BMW, likely planning her next move, trying to figure out how to spin this disaster in her favor. But I was already 3 steps ahead, my mind working through the implications with the same strategic thinking that had built Stone Auto Group into a regional powerhouse. 2 years meant this wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a calculated, deliberate betrayal. Every family barbecue, every holiday dinner, every time I'd invited Preston over to discuss business, they'd been playing me for a fool. At home, I sent Amelia to her room and told her to pack a bag. "You're staying with Grandma and Grandpa tonight," I explained. "Daddy has some things to work out with Mommy." My 16-year-old daughter wasn't naive. She knew that her parents' marriage had just fallen apart, and she was trying to process how her innocent remark had set off such a huge chain reaction. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" she asked quietly. The question hit me harder than I anticipated. "I don't know yet, sweetheart. But whatever happens, it won't change how much I love you." After dropping Amelia at my parents' house, I headed back home to find Camila pacing in the living room like a trapped animal. She had changed out of her dinner dress into jeans and a sweater, her "I'm just a regular mom" disguise. "We need to talk," she said before I could speak. "No," I responded simply. "You need to listen." Camila's eyes flared with anger. "You don't get to dictate things now. I get to call the shots. This is my house, bought with money from my business, in my name. You want to stay here? You follow my rules," I said, my voice calm but firm. She recoiled, as if I had slapped her. The woman who had been manipulating me for 2 years was now faced with a version of her husband she had never seen before. "First rule," I continued, settling into my chair with deliberate calm. "No more lies. I want names, dates, places. I want to know every time you've been with him. Every time you betrayed our marriage." "Chase, you're being unreasonable." "Unreasonable?" I chuckled coldly. "I haven't even started being unreasonable yet." The next morning, I was already at my desk by 6 a.m., but I wasn't reviewing sales reports or dealership inventories. Instead, I was going through bank statements, credit card bills, and phone records that my lawyer had expedited overnight. When you own 4 successful auto dealerships, you learn that information is power, and I was determined to have all of it. What I found made my stomach churn. The affair wasn't just emotional betrayal, it was financial theft. Camila had been using our joint accounts to pay for hotel stays, expensive dinners, and weekend getaways with Preston. She had even bought him a Rolex for his birthday using money from our business account, claiming it was a family gift for his help with marketing. But the real shock came when I contacted my old college roommate, now working as a private investigator. Within 2 hours, he confirmed something that made everything worse. This wasn't Camila's first affair. 3 years into our marriage, she had a 6-month relationship with her personal trainer. 5 years after that, it was her boss at the marketing firm where she used to work. How did I miss this? I asked myself, staring at photographs and hotel receipts that painted a picture of systematic deception stretching nearly 2 decades. My phone buzzed with a text from Brenda Hayes. "Can we meet? I found something in Preston's Things You Need to See." An hour later, we sat in a coffee shop downtown, both looking like survivors of a natural disaster. Brenda's eyes were red from crying, but there was a steely determination in her voice when she spoke. "I've been going through his computer," she said, sliding a flash drive across the table. "There are emails, Chase. Hundreds of them, going back 3 years." I plugged the drive into my laptop, and the blood drained from my face. The emails weren't just romantic exchanges. They were detailed plans. Plans to slowly drain money from both of our families. Plans for Camila to push me into making Preston a partner in the dealership business. Plans to eventually run off together with everything they could liquidate. "They've been playing the long game," I said quietly. Brenda Hayes nodded, her jaw tight. "But here's the thing that really burns me up," she added. "Look at this email from last month." I scrolled to the message she indicated, and my hand clenched into a fist. Camila had written to Preston about how boring and predictable I'd become, how she deserved better than being trapped in suburban mediocrity with a man who only cared about car sales. The woman I had loved for 20 years, the mother of my child, had been methodically dismantling our life while mocking everything I'd built to provide for our family. "What do you want to do?" Brenda asked. I closed the laptop and looked at my sister-in-law, now my partner in seeking justice. I want to destroy them both legally, financially, and socially. They want to play games with our lives. Let's show them what real consequences look like. By noon, I had 3 attorneys, a forensic accountant, and a public relations firm working for me. The beauty of owning successful businesses is that you develop relationships with the best professionals in every field. When you need to fight a war, you call on the cavalry. My divorce lawyer was ruthless and brilliant. She had already filed papers to freeze all joint accounts, prevent Camila from accessing her safe deposit box, and set up temporary custody arrangements that heavily favored me. But the real genius was her suggestion to immediately remove Camila from all business accounts and insurance policies. She doesn't know it yet, the lawyer explained. But as of this morning, she has no access to credit cards, no health insurance, and no legal claim to any business assets. The prenup you signed 20 years ago is ironclad. The forensic accountant had found something even more damaging. Using business funds for personal affairs wasn't just adultery, it was embezzlement. Every hotel room, every expensive dinner, every gift purchased with company funds could be considered theft. But I wasn't just playing defense. I was going on the offensive in ways that would hit both of them where it would hurt the most. Preston Hayes worked as a project manager for a large construction firm. A single phone call to their CEO, explaining that an employee was embezzling funds through fraudulent expense reports, would destroy his career in an instant. The construction industry was small and tight-knit. Once word got out that he couldn't be trusted, he'd never find work again. For Camila, the social destruction would be more sophisticated. She prided herself on being a pillar of the community, serving on charity boards, and hosting fundraising events. My PR firm was already preparing a carefully worded statement about personal betrayals and financial irregularities that would ensure she'd never be welcomed in those circles again. My phone rang. Camila's name appeared on the screen. Chase Stone speaking. I answered coldly. Chase, please. We need to talk. Her voice was desperate now, probably because she realized her credit cards weren't working. No, we don't. Talk to my attorney. Her name is Jennifer Walsh at Walsh & Associates. She'll explain your new reality. You can't just cut me off. I have rights. You had rights when you were my faithful wife. Now, you're just someone who stole from my business and betrayed my trust. You'll be lucky if I don't have you arrested. I hung up and turned back to my computer. There was still work to be done. The final piece of my strategy involved Amelia. My daughter needed to understand what had really happened, not the sanitized version Camila would try to feed her. She was 16, old enough to handle the truth about her mother's choices. That evening, I sat down with Amelia at my parents' house and showed her the evidence. Not the explicit details, but enough financial records and timelines to make it clear that this wasn't a momentary mistake. This was years of calculated betrayal. I'm sorry you had to learn about this, I told her. But you deserve to know why our family is falling apart. And you deserve to know it's not your fault. My daughter looked at the papers, then at me. What happens now, Dad? Now we rebuild. Without the people who don't deserve to be part of our lives. 3 days into my systematic dismantling of Camila and Preston's lives, I received a call that changed everything. My private investigator's voice was grim when he delivered news that made my blood run cold. Chase, you need to sit down for this. I've been digging deeper into Preston's background, and there's something you need to know about your daughter. My heart stopped. What about Amelia? The timeline doesn't add up. I pulled medical records legally through proper channels and verified dates. Amelia was born in March 2008, which means she was conceived in June 2007. According to your credit card records, that's when Camila took that solo trip to visit her college friend in Denver. The room started spinning. What are you saying? I'm saying Preston Hayes lived in Denver from 2006 to 2008. He was working construction there before he moved back here and met Brenda. The timing is too perfect to be a coincidence. I hung up and stared at the wall, trying to process what I had just learned. The daughter I had raised for 16 years, the girl I taught to drive, helped with homework, and walked to school every morning, might not be mine biologically. The thought hit me like a physical blow. But even as that thought struck, another voice in my head pushed back. Biology doesn't make a father. Love and dedication do. 16 years of midnight fevers, soccer games, and bedtime stories. That makes a father. Still, I needed to know the truth. For legal reasons, if nothing else. If Preston was Amelia's biological father, it would complicate everything. custody, inheritance, and child support. The DNA test was simple. A cheek swab from Amelia during what she thought was a routine doctor's visit. Another sample from Preston, obtained through a coffee cup my investigator retrieved from his workplace. The waiting was torture. Meanwhile, Camila had been trying to reach me constantly. Desperate voicemails about needing to explain everything and work things out for Amelia's sake. She'd even shown up at the dealership, causing a scene that required security to escort her out. When the DNA results arrived, I opened the envelope with hands that trembled slightly. The words swam before my eyes. Probability of paternity, 0%. Relief flooded through me so intensely that I actually laughed out loud. Amelia was mine. No matter what else Camila had done, no matter how many lies she'd told, my daughter was my daughter. But that relief quickly morphed into something colder and harder. Camila had let me believe for 16 years that there was even a possibility of doubt. She had kept the secret of that Denver trip, knowing it aligned with her affair timeline, and never said a word. I picked up my phone and called my attorney. Jennifer, I need you to add something to the divorce filing. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. And I want the DNA evidence included in our custody case. The nuclear option was now on the table. Camila had escalated this beyond simple adultery into something akin to psychological warfare. It was time to respond in kind. That evening, I sat down with Amelia for the hardest conversation of my life. She deserved to know what her mother had done. More importantly, she needed to hear from me that none of it changed how I felt about her. No matter what your mother did, no matter what she says, or what anyone else says, you're my daughter. Period. End of story. Amelia hugged me so tightly that I could barely breathe. I love you, Dad. I love you too, kiddo. More than you'll ever know. The next morning, I received news that Preston Hayes had been arrested. The fraudulent loan documents, combined with evidence of embezzlement from his construction company, had led to felony charges that could send him to prison for 5 to 10 years. Camila, meanwhile, had hired her own attorney, a shark named Davidson, who specialized in high-conflict divorces. His first move was to demand an emergency hearing regarding my financial abuse and parental alienation of Amelia. The courtroom battle was swift and decisive. My attorney presented evidence of Camila's systematic theft from business accounts, her fraudulent use of credit cards, and her conspiracy with Preston to commit loan fraud. The judge's expression grew more stern as the evidence piled up. Mrs. Stone, the judge said finally, given the evidence of financial misconduct and the clear pattern of deception, I'm ordering supervised visitation only until these criminal matters are resolved. Camila's face went white. Supervised visitation meant she could only see Amelia in the presence of a court-appointed monitor, and only for a few hours each week. Outside the courthouse, she confronted me one last time. You've destroyed my entire life, she said, tears streaming down her face. No, I replied calmly. You destroyed your life when you chose to betray your family. I just refuse to go down with you. What about Amelia? She needs her mother. I looked at the woman I had once loved, the person who had shared my bed and my dreams for 2 decades, and felt nothing but pity. Amelia needs a mother she can trust. You're not that person anymore. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Camila received exactly what the prenup specified: 10% of marital assets, no claim to business property, and limited visitation rights contingent on completing counseling and paying restitution for the embezzled funds. Preston Hayes was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. Brenda kept their house and filed for an annulment, citing fraud as grounds to void the marriage entirely. 3 months after that nightmare dinner at Romano's, I stood in my office, looking out at the lot full of cars, thinking about second chances and new beginnings. Amelia was thriving in therapy, preparing to apply to colleges, and had started dating a nice boy from her AP Calculus class. The phone rang. It was my attorney, with news of a business opportunity. A chance to expand Stone Auto Group into the luxury market with a new Mercedes dealership. What do you think? She asked. I smiled, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Genuine optimism about the future. I think it's time to build something new. Some people learn from their mistakes. Others become stronger because of them. The betrayal that was supposed to destroy me had instead freed me from a marriage built on lies and opened doors I never imagined possible. Camila had wanted to trade me in for a newer model. Instead, she had just given me the freedom to become the man I was always meant to be. 1 year after that disastrous dinner at Romano's, I stood in the showroom of my newest acquisition, Stone Luxury Motors, specializing in high-end European vehicles. The Mercedes-Benz dealership had been a dream for years, but it took losing everything I thought mattered to gain the focus needed to achieve it. Amelia walked through the gleaming showroom, admiring the latest models while telling me about her acceptance to 3 top-tier universities. At 17, she had grown into a remarkable young woman, stronger, more independent, and surprisingly wise about human nature after witnessing her mother's betrayal firsthand. "Dad, look at this one," she called out, pointing to a silver convertible. "Perfect for college, don't you think?" I laughed, remembering when car purchases used to require family discussions and budget meetings. "We'll talk about it after you choose which university you want to attend." The past year had transformed both of us in ways I hadn't expected. Amelia had initially struggled with anger toward her mother, but therapy had helped her understand that Camila's choices reflected her own character flaws, not Amelia's failures as a daughter. She learned to maintain boundaries while still loving the woman who gave birth to her. My phone buzzed with a text from Brenda Hayes. "Coffee tomorrow? I have news about the business." Brenda and I had developed an unexpected friendship forged by shared betrayal and mutual respect. She'd used her settlement money to start a marketing consultancy that was already thriving, and we began discussing a potential partnership to promote the luxury dealership. The strange truth was that Preston and Camila's betrayal had freed both Brenda and me to become better versions of ourselves. We'd stopped settling for relationships built on obligation and started building lives based on genuine choice and authentic connection. "Mr. Stone," my sales manager said, approaching with a clipboard. "The regional Mercedes rep wants to schedule that meeting about expanding to a second location." Success had a different flavor now, cleaner, more purposeful. Every achievement felt earned rather than inherited or expected. The business had grown beyond my father's modest used car lot into something that would truly make him proud. That evening, Amelia and I sat in our redesigned living room, working on college essays together. She was writing about resilience and learning to trust her own judgment. I was reviewing business plans for expansion into luxury RV sales. "Do you ever miss how things used to be?" she asked during a break from writing. I considered the question carefully. "I miss the security of thinking I could trust everyone, but I don't miss living with lies." She nodded thoughtfully. "Mom called again yesterday. She wants to take me to dinner next week." Amelia still maintained limited contact with Camila, who was slowly rebuilding her life after losing everything. The supervised visitation had ended, but their relationship remained careful and distant. "What did you tell her?" "That I'd think about it." "Is that okay?" "It's your choice, sweetheart. Whatever you decide, I'll support you." The freedom to make that statement honestly felt like the greatest victory of all. 2 years had passed since the night that changed everything. I stood on the deck of my new lake house, watching Amelia and her boyfriend Gar practice wakeboarding while Brenda grilled for a 4th of July celebration. Life had settled into patterns I never imagined possible during those dark months of divorce proceedings and custody battles. The business had expanded to 6 locations across 2 states. Amelia had chosen Northwestern University for engineering and maintained a cordial but distant relationship with her mother. Most surprisingly, Brenda and I had discovered that friendship forged in betrayal could evolve into something deeper and more genuine. "The burgers are ready," Brenda called out, her voice carrying across the water to where I stood, contemplating how dramatically life could change when you stopped accepting less than you deserved. We weren't married. Both of us remained cautious about legal entanglements after our previous experiences, but we built something honest and straightforward based on shared values rather than romantic illusions or financial convenience. Amelia bounded up from the dock, dripping wet and grinning. "Dad, Garrett wants to know if you'll teach him to drive the boat tomorrow." "Of course, as long as he promises not to run it into the dock like someone I know did last month." She laughed and grabbed a towel, looking every bit the confident young woman she'd become. The trauma of discovering her mother's betrayal had shaped her, but it hadn't broken her. Instead, it had taught her to value authenticity over appearances and substance over charm. "Any word from your mother lately?" I asked casually. "She texted last week. She's engaged to some guy she met at work. Apparently, he manages the store where she works." Camila had rebuilt her life in simpler circumstances, a modest apartment, a retail job, a relationship with someone who matched her reduced station. The woman who'd once hosted charity galas was now planning a wedding that would probably cost less than her old monthly hair salon budget. "How do you feel about that?" I asked. Amelia shrugged. "I'm happy she found someone. I hope she learned something from everything that happened." The maturity in her response reminded me that children are often more resilient than their parents give them credit for. She processed her mother's betrayal, learned from it, and moved forward without carrying destructive anger or unrealistic expectations. As the sun set over the lake, casting golden light across the water, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. Preston Hayes was finishing his prison sentence and would be released to probation next year. Camila was building a new life with limited resources, but apparently genuine commitment to change. And I was standing on my own property, surrounded by people who had chosen to be part of my life, rather than people who felt obligated to tolerate me. "Dad," Amelia said, interrupting my thoughts. "Brenda wants to know if you're ready to eat, or if you're going to stand there looking philosophical all evening." I laughed and walked toward the table where real relationships were built. One honest conversation, one shared meal, one genuine moment at a time. The betrayal that was supposed to destroy my family had instead taught us what family actually meant. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you creates space for the best thing that was waiting to happen.